Oh, hello. I'm so glad to see you there. It is I, Chaz Evans, Director of Exhibitions for VGA Gallery, and it's time for another episode of VGA Fireside. Before we begin, I have a list of thank yous and credits to offer you because, as always, gratitude is the true path. I want to thank producer and Director of Ops for VGA Gallery, Bryce Poles, and I want to thank the designer and Director of Communications, Eleanor Schichtel. I want to thank the VGA staff and the VGA board. I want to thank the Independent Game Designers Association Chicago chapter. Thank you to Ross for helping spread the word. And I want to extend a special welcome and hello to Ava Wombley's Intro to New Media and Expanded Cinema classes at UIC. Welcome. Glad you are joining us. I want to thank the Electric Mirrors for the groovy intro music that you just heard. And I want to thank the Oldham Music Center Youth Brass Band for the fanfare that you're about to enjoy and hopefully puts you in high spirits. And if you know of an organization or group that would be interested in this program or have any feedback at all, please drop us a line at info@vgagallery.org. We would love to hear from you. So, without any further ado, super producer Bryce, could you please hit us with the VGA Fireside fanfare, please? Fanfare! Yes! The fanfare is played, and thus this episode of VGA Fireside is officially in session. So please let me now introduce our special guest for this evening, Tanya DePass. VGA Gallery welcomes Tanya DePass for this episode of VGA Fireside. Tanya founded I Need Diverse Games, a not-for-profit foundation based in Chicago dedicated to the better diversification of all aspects of gaming. She is a writer, podcaster, public speaker, Twitch partner, and diversity consultant on games such as Far Cry New Dawn and Wandersong. Everyone at home, please help me welcome Tanya DePass to VGA Fireside. Welcome.
Hello, how are you?
I'm doing okay. How are you doing? Are you okay?
I'm here, I made it.
Okay. Glad to know you're here and in one piece. And very excited to that you could take a little time to talk to us about your work, perhaps address some projects that the VGA community and audience aren't familiar with, or perhaps are familiar with and want to know more about. To start things off, I usually mention to our guests that I know a lot of people interested in joining the video games field professionally, maybe tuning into this program, especially students. Mm-hmm. So we like to know everyone's, origin story, how basically they got their start and how they got involved working professionally in games in the first place. So my first question is simply, how did you get started working in games?
An accident, because I was angry tweeting about 7 years ago. Actually, next week is the 7-year anniversary of the first tweet. I want to say October 4th or 5th. and I was mad about video games, and
Mm-hmm.
I use the hashtag I need diverse games, and a lot of people started using it. They started tagging on their tweets, and it was right time, right place. A lot of industry people saw it. A lot of people wanted to have that diversity conversation, and you know, it has led to me causing all kind of trouble in the industry, I guess, in a good way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, got interviewed, did some podcasts, did my own podcast for a couple years. Was on. I'm trying to think of where was the first place I spoke to. I spoke to a few outlets because it trended and it didn't just go away like most hashtags do. Geek Girl Con did some content about it, and just the conversation kept going. It got its own hashtag. It got its own site, its own community, and people wanted to keep talking about diversity in gaming, and it just kind of grew from there.
That is an excellent point of origin. It's a spark. It's a little thing and grows so exponentially from that. Can you take us through that sort of arc between just angry tweets to having a not-for-profit organization that is running and functioning?
So it was angry tweets, a lot of media attention, the tweets staying viral, its own hashtag, its own site, being asked to talk about I need diverse games and inclusion, being asked to try to do some inclusion review. Eventually that became diversity consulting. And, it became basically two jobs. I still had a day job when this all started.
Mm-hmm.
I was working higher ed. And, was going to more conventions, went to GamerX 3, came back, was let go for my day job, and was like, all right, this is my sign. I'm going to try to make this work for as long as unemployment runs.
So the internet is waving you through. It's like, keep going.
Yeah. Because I had been on the fence of like, do I try to make this a full-time job? Do I not? Because, full-time job with benefits, working for yourself, big difference.
Yeah.
And, I put it out there, hey, lost my day job, trying to make this happen. And the internet community came through. We were able to get enough support on Patreon and make it a thing. And then the next year I was like, you know what? If I want to keep doing this and, cross my T's, dot my I's, made an organization. And from there, just doing a lot of consulting, doing a lot of public speaking, a lot of writing about games and things like that. And we're here now.
Yeah. The cluster of all these activities has all these forms. I guess that's where the next question would lead us. You're a writer, a speaker, a podcaster, organizer, consultant. One could probably very authentically use the term polymath to describe how many different practices that you're involved with working with games. For all these kinds of media making, which ones came the most naturally and which ones came sort of afterwards? Basically, were there some that just, flowed from what felt like the natural conversations you wanted to have online, and which ones were ones you had to, that were like a next level of learning?
Most of it was learning, except for the writing. And even that had a level of learning, because writing for a game is much different than just prose. Thinking about, if for anyone who's written like narrative dialogue and branching dialogue, where if character A says or does this, what are their options? Then how does character B respond? How does that all funnel into the next scene? So you have to think of it more in terms of script writing. But the rest of it, I'd been streaming a while already. I'd been doing a lot of other things. So mainly writing, but then all the other stuff. Because, I worked in higher ed, but I wasn't a professional public speaker.
Right.
We've all had talking meetings, things like that, but it's not the same as standing on a stage and talking in front of a few hundred people. So polishing my public speaking, definitely learning different ways to write were part of that.
Right. So this is sort of practice that comes out of the other ones in a kind of sequence. I think people just might be interested in that to know sort of like, does this all just happen simultaneously, or is there sort of stepped sort of progress to all these sorts of things. We've talked about all this kind of media making and that is related to games. But before we jump into maybe one of your specific projects, I also like to ask guests, what non-game types of media are you particularly involved with or interested in? And do those non-games inform your work in games?
Right now I'm learning how to cross stitch and make dice. And
Great.
the only way that connects with me for gaming stuff is I now get to use dice that I've made for some of the RPG content that I do.
And that means your rolls are always better, right? If you've made your own dice.
Oh God, no. My own dice have failed me severely.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about the new cross stitch effort? Do you have anything around? I'm putting you on the spot. I know we didn't talk about this.
That's okay. It's very new. When I say I'm learning, I mean I'm literally learning. That's two rows. My friend Awkwardish Panda is teaching me how to cross stitch. She found a very cute frog pattern, which was pretty easy to read. It's all even numbers of stitches. So I am very slowly cross stitching because it takes me a lot of effort. I have to concentrate. And then dice. There may be dice on my desk. I don't know because the dice keep like winding up everywhere. Aha, there is one on my desk. And I've been learning how to make dice. This is actually UV resin. Which cures almost instantly because I really wanted to learn how to put things in dice. But the mold is kind of frosty. So there is a tiny key in there. You just can't see it very well. So
you get your own molds, you get your own resin, and then it's about sort of accessorizing from there. Yeah. I feel like others I've talked to have said the cross stitch may, like perler beads, have a certain resonance with pixel art. Do you find this is the case?
Maybe you can't easily see it. I've actually got a perler art behind me that a friend sent me of one of my Twitch emotes. But I do see that I could see a connection between cross-stitching perler art and pixel art. Yes.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate you sharing those extra practices sort of off the cuff. I'll mention to the audience really quickly, I have a bunch of questions that are all prepared, but if there are any questions from you, the audience, please keep those questions coming. Well, I guess we haven't had one yet. Okay, start them and then keep them coming. And at any point, I'll gladly spike whatever I have in the questions that I prepared and go directly to the things that you want to know about and things you want to talk about with Tanya. So while the audience considers that, I want to bring up Into the Motherlands, which is role-playing streaming show you have on Twitch, and it's approaching a year anniversary, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. Yes.
That first of all, congratulations on having a full year of role-playing on stream. Do you think we could watch a clip from this show?
Sure.
So Bryce, have you such a thing to share with us?
It'll be a surprise for all of us.
Yeah.
It'll be a surprise for all of us.
Okay. Yeah. We don't. That's okay. We love the fanfare so much. I could use an extra hint of it. Bryce is saying 1 second. We are holding for clip.
Yes.
Yeah. I would ask you to set it up a la late night talk show, but it's like clip roulette. We don't yet know what clip
it is. It is clip roulette. It'll be all of us. Son of a Antivan whore.
Wow. Okay.
That's a fantastic series of words. So can I roll if I ever roll anything in this game? Can I just roll like physical guys? Because
it doesn't seem to like y'all tonight.
Yo. Lean into the fail.
That's like
think
I can't fail in front of although there's not a lot. No, I can't.
Sure.
No, I absolutely can't.
Girl, you can fail in front of me.
I'm not sure there's a ton.
Wow, so that's season 2 because Abria's there.
What was going on right there?
I believe we were in combat of some kind, and see what happened, because I don't know if that's season 2 or season 3. It's season 2 because that's my old apartment.
It says it's from season 2.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
We were having some kind of combat because we ran into more space squids. We did not run into pirates again until season 3. So I believe we were having space squid combat, and we all rolled poorly because in Cortex, a 1 is a hitch. You know how we're used to D&D, a 1 is a fail. So, yeah, that was combat that wasn't going well for any of us.
And it's one of those nadirs of the battle where everyone has to find some place to find morale. I was hoping we could. We want to describe the sort of the visual layout of the show as well. So we've got. Is there? Okay, I was just trying to think of so we could get the image again.
Twitch clips, so it's kind of hard.
Well, anyway, there was a cast of players that all have their own windows at the bottom, and then there's other information and role-playing stats that were above them, and those are all your own customizations of the Cortex role-playing game system, if I'm correct. Mm-hmm. So I want to ask you about that. I guess maybe you could mention for those who are interested in developing their own role-playing systems, that come from their own perspectives. What's the process of that like? And what are the main things that you have adjusted about Cortex to make sure that the game that you are playing and presenting in Into the Motherlands comes directly from your perspective and the perspectives of your collaborators?
Well, in terms of perspective, that's more on the narrative side, not so much the mechanics side. Mm-hmm. So the conceit of Into the Motherlands is Mansa Musa, who was a real emperor in the 14th century in Mali. He actually did send an expedition out to the Americas that never made it. Our conceit is that expedition actually wound up on our planet of Utoa in the Motherlands, and the stream that you're watching, the book that we're putting out, is 2,000 to 3,000 years after that's happened. So those humans have now fully integrated into Utoan society. So you've got the Musalians, which are those people and their descendants for the last 3,000 years. You have the Monsegene, you have Hyanol, which are hyanid-like creatures, which is what I play on the show in Abria as well. The Monsegene are sentient, I'm forgetting words, sentient androids, but it's kind of like Data, where they're as close to a living sentient person as they can be. It's not like the not quite uncanny valley looking androids of the old sci-fi some of us grew up with. And so basically these humans shuffled off Earth 14th century and wound up on this planet, and now they have integrated. And the conceit is those people, those black humans that have now integrated into Utoan society, they don't know what colonialism or slavery is, because that never happened where they are. They were the aliens that landed on this society, that landed on this planet.
So it's about imagining this alternative future where colonialism is just deleted from the historical record. Well,
not alternate. It's just, it's sci-fi. It's all made up. Because when B-Dave and I were talking, we realized, because at first I kind of had the idea of modern day black people are tired of the world and Corona and everything else, and we just leave. He's like, that's cool, but we as American black people in this day and age, we too have this history of colonialism and racism, so we can't just ignore that. Then we really would have to go, this still is affecting us, even if we said, okay, a bunch of black Americans or black people around the world got in a ship and was like, deuces, we're out. we're taking that baggage with us to now a new civilization. So instead, it's just all new, all made up, based on one little aspect of history.
So therefore, without a ship, you have the space with which to consider that, but without the baggage. Right?
Correct. So, we kind of hand wave how exactly they got from they were sailing toward the Americas to they landed on this whole other planet and solar system. Wormhole, whatever it is, Stargate, we'll figure that out. But they're there now, and they got there about 2,000-3,000 years ago, and now they're integrated. So a lot of the Montsegane, there's Musalians who decide or go through processes to become androids, and that's them. There's a Solansi, which we haven't seen on the show except for one NPC that Eugenio brought on, but the Solansi are plant hybrid people. They are Musalian and plant, or Hyanol and plant. So they are plant hybrid race or culture.
Mm-hmm. So all that speaks to how fully fledged the writing side is to create this space of consideration.
Mm-hmm.
And but there's, I'm sure, there's so many details going on in this image we're just looking at right here. Not just the players at the bottom, but we've got a spreadsheet, and we've got.
So this is our session 0, actually.
Okay.
So this was our very raw data character sheet, where we put everything in there, and then we sent that to Cortex. They could make us the nice character sheets you saw in the earlier clip. So, like most things, everything started as a spreadsheet.
Right.
So we had to say, okay, what are your skills? What are you doing? What die are you putting on it? So basically, Cortex is a D4 to a D12 system. You don't use a D20 at all, and it's a dice pool. Mm-hmm. And so when you decide to do an action, let's say you wind up in combat or conflict. That's a better example. Let's say our characters are in conflict, and I'm initiating the conflict. And the storyteller, in this case, Eugenio, will be like, okay, well, you're starting this. What pool are you putting together? And then when I roll, no matter how many dice I roll, the top 2 are your total. And then you have to beat that. Not meet, it's beat. So let's say we're having a fist fight, what have you, and I get a total of 12. You've got to get at least 13 to beat me. And then if you really roll high, like if you roll 2 12s and get a total of 24, you would blow mine out of the water. And that opens the door for a lot of narrative. Tell us how you did ridiculously well.
Right. So this rolling system with the top 2, is that conventional for Cortex, or is this one of your modifications that are
that is part and parcel of Cortex. A lot of what we changed were the professions and the stresses we changed to our own, and the values we changed to our own. So a lot of what you're seeing in this sheet are things that we decided these are the values of the characters.
Yeah.
So when we roll these dice, so if, let's say, in later episodes, or once we have our character sheets, you see like I'm picking, I usually go with knowledge because my character's a Hyanol. She's smart. She, if she is on a ship, she can probably sit down and figure out the systems or the engines or what have you, even though she loves to fight. Because I took it a step further with not just the Hyanol, the smart ones, they're like the Vulcans, but she likes to fight, but that doesn't negate her being intelligent. So, there is kind of Hyanols are the smart ones, the scientists, the teachers, the lore keepers of this game and this world, but that doesn't mean that she can't pick up a sword and learn how to fight. So
there's still options available to every character type.
Right. So almost everyone involved in the show, all of us either play D&D, we've written for D&D, we do this professionally, and we all agree that the class system of, well, you're a human paladin, so you are always X strong, you're always smart in this, but let's say you can't see in the dark because you're human. Yeah. We wanted to get away from the idea of, because a Hyanol is smart, and they're the educators, what have you, that they can never learn how to fight. Like I could never pick up a sword. I could never go into combat if I decide that I want to be a Hynel versus a Spine Ripper, which we haven't seen. No one's played it yet. But a Spine Ripper is basically a brute. You fight with your hands, you pick up what's in hand, but that doesn't mean you can't have a Spine Ripper that didn't go to college. You know, that Spine Ripper might have a PhD in astrophysics. You don't know.
I was about to say you could rip spines in college, but then I realized as an educator, I probably shouldn't be promoting such a thing.
I mean, you could. It wouldn't go well. That usually just works in Mortal Kombat. But in the context of our game, you know, and it's not a literal you're reaching in and ripping out spines, but it's a profession of, if I tell you I'm a spine ripper, it's like, oh, okay, so you can really beat people up. Cool. But that doesn't mean that the spine ripper is always relegated to being front and center and always being the one to be the meat shield, like we see paladins and fighters and barbarians.
RPGs,
yeah.
We have a question from the audience.
Oh,
it turns out. So this is about sort of making another one of these connection making questions. So the question is, do conversations in these gaming environments inform what you decide to focus towards in your work as a consultant?
A little bit, but normally when I'm consulting, I am doing what the client has requested. So, you know, and there's no template really. There is I'm going to give you an executive summary of what I've learned based on what you've asked me to do. But one client may need me to just review the script, and they have someone else to review the art. They have someone else to review the music. So if all I'm doing is, okay, I'm reading words and I'm giving you this section of text is not great, you should consider this, or it's stereotypical. But I do try to think about in the feedback, okay, here are the things that I've observed, here are the things that I would suggest you change. And some of the parlance is, you know, like danger areas that are safe, areas that could be an issue, but it depends. But I am thinking of the perception the game or the product could get at the end of the day once it is announced or revealed, or people can get their hands on it and play it. Because I've been brought in at all areas of all portions of projects. Some projects I've been brought in from the ground up, like, here's the script unedited, please run with it. And then I've been brought in on other things. It's like, oh, you're about to go to certification. You know it's actually too late for this, right? Anything I tell you is going to delay your game and cost you a lot of money. Why did you wait this long?
And that's important information they need to hear. So that's really an important insight. You're sort of talking to us about the back and forth and the day-to-day of doing this consulting work. So yeah, we sort of just segued into that from the audience question. So I should establish we're talking about games like Wandersong, games like in the Far Cry series, and other titles as well, are all titles that you've done consulting work for. So you mentioned, you know, you're giving a sort of a feedback on what are danger zones. What you mentioned earlier. When we're talking about danger zones, we're talking about things that are in the game that may have like harmful cultural assumptions at all inside them. This is what we're talking about.
Well, you know, danger zone would be like, oh, this is very stereotypical, and if you don't change it, people are going to look at this and go, you didn't talk to any actual black people or brown people or queer people. You know, like if you read some dialogue and the character sounds like they came out of a 70s blaxploitation film, unless it's the vibe of the game. But if it's not the vibe of the game, and this character, you know, sounds like, wow, what's the famous blaxploitation character? Like, if they sound like Shaft, but that's not the vibe of the game, that's going to be a problem. Or visually, even if their dialogue is perfectly fine, and you put a young black man on screen, he's got sagging pants, he's got gold teeth, he's got the cocked hat, you are giving us a stereotype of a black man as a thug. Or, you know, stereotypical writing in accents is a big thing that I've noticed with some games where I get it and someone will actually read out these lines, but reading it looks really weird. As a writer, when you try to write out an accent, it just looks strange. And it's hard for me, if I've got to read that dialogue as a player, you're just going to have people stumbling over things that they probably shouldn't be trying to pronounce anyway as an American or outside that culture.
Mm-hmm. So after you point these things out, can you talk about what kind of changes you see as a direct response to your feedback working as a consultant?
Let's see. What can I say that it doesn't break an NDA?
Yeah, I don't want to point you on the spot because I know that there may be these are employers and there's rules, but I'm fascinated to know.
I mean, I've seen like obvious changes to characters where, one game that I consulted on, they were very concerned about the black women that were characters in the game, and they were characters you come across a lot and you eventually fight. And they were concerned, like, are we making these black women too villainous? But also, look at their hair, look at how they dress. Are we hypersexualizing them? And I was able to go, so I realized many of you don't have to think about this, but black hair, no one is getting a perm in the apocalypse. You need to consider that if you give this black chick straight hair, I'm going to sit there and wonder who's doing her hair. Like, or if she has braids and you claim that they're extensions, even my hair, it's all my hair, getting it done takes several hours. If you're running a gang in a post-apocalyptic world, you don't have 12 hours to sit and for someone to do your hair. Also, who's doing it? Where are you getting the hair dye? Where are you getting the implements? Because you have to put something in your hair for it to lock. So, just the very simple things of, they never had to think about this because they're not black people with natural hair. Or thinking about, even though it's the post-apocalyptic setting, you're saying these characters from a place that exists in the real world right now. Are you creating a stereotype of someone from, let's say, New York or Philadelphia or something? Because those stereotypes are still there because we as current day people are playing this game, even if the setting is in the future.
Does the apocalypse really have those amenities set up?
Probably not.
Probably not. So say you had a conversation like that as a part of a consulting appointment. You mentioned, sometimes that conversation happens too late, and but does it sometimes happen right on time, or you're sort of brought in right at the beginning of the process? I guess the question is, how long is like an arc of consulting for a game typically, and like how often do you see it people thinking about this from the get-go, and how many times is it a rush at the end?
Most times, with the exception of a couple games from a few years ago, most of the time I'm brought in early enough where it's like, okay, here's what I've seen that could change. Here's my suggestions. Usually there's enough time to implement it. So it could be usually a few weeks, and there's a contract I've been on for over a year for a game that's not even announced. And it's a constant back and forth. Here, read this article. Here's some art. Go in and play this alpha build of the game. So you could be looking at something for a couple weeks. Here, come back. Oh, now we've got mocap to show you. Now we've got characters that you can actually run around in the game world with. We've got the pre-alpha before people get to go on Steam and play it. And it's just you have to look at games in a whole different way. Yeah. Which makes it hard to then sometimes just turn on a game and enjoy it.
Right.
Like some days I just want to play a video game and not have to think this hard about it, but it's hard because you can't ever turn off consultant brain once it starts. So it could be anywhere from a few weeks to over 2 years if they have you on for the whole development cycle.
So that could be a pretty long relationship. There could be a lot of back and forth, but do you feel like you could really get into to details, minutia? Hopefully. We have another audience question, I think, about that. So this new question is regarding the appearance of black characters in games. Has this idea caused an unrealistic view of people, much in the way Barbie dolls create an unrealistic self-image for many people?
I'm not quite sure what that question actually means. I need some clarification because...
Yeah, sorry.
No, don't apologize.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out where this question's going.
Oh yeah. If you could offer some clarifying comments, audience member, we will listen to them. Otherwise, I believe if we're thinking about Barbie dolls creating unrealistic gender roles and beauty standards, has that similar principle worked for Black characters in games? I think.
Yeah, well, I'm waiting to see if the audience member clarifies.
Okay. All right.
But I mean, I'm hoping
that's the better thing to do. I was just trying to keep things flowing. You're right.
I mean, it could, but here's the thing: games, especially now, look so photorealistic because Barbie doll. The whole thing with Barbie dolls creating a false body image, that's a whole other thing that I'm not qualified to speak on. But if you mean in terms of black video game characters creating stereotypes, and that's what people think we're like, I don't know. Because most of the time, black video game characters look nothing like me. They're not my skin shade. They don't have locks. They're not short. They're not fat. They're not. And it's usually like they're the brown, the video game shade of brown that doesn't actually exist, and you can never tell what race someone is. They might or might not be black. And if they are black, they usually sound like they escaped out of a 70s blaxploitation flick, no matter the genre of the game. I mean, it could. I think actually the news and misinformation that we get every day on places like Fox has made that much worse, because I get a lot of people who, one, because of my name, until they meet me or see me, they make a lot of assumptions. And two, I would hope that people aren't looking to video games for realistic representations of actual people. Because the whole body dysmorphia, body image thing with Barbie dolls, that was something else entirely and before my time, and I don't have the psychological background to discuss that.
And so therefore, it's not easy to just immediately map one conversation about representation onto another one, because they're all specific and complex.
Right. And also, like Deathloop is out. And we have Cole, we have Juliana. There are men walking around who look like Cole right now, because they probably took an actual person who and face cammed him, and that was the actor that they used. It's hard because I don't look to video games for representation of what real life people look like. And if anyone does look at a video game and thinks that that's what black people all look like, that's a them problem. Means they need to get out and get more culture and get outside more and meet actual real life black people when it's safe and we're not in a pandemic. But most video games that have black people look really good and look photorealistic. So there could be actual black people walking around looking like Juliana or the woman that's in the vampire game Back 4 Blood. But I don't think it does. But again, I don't look to video games for what black people actually look like, because we're so varied, because thanks slavery. So
that is a considered answer to that question, which leads to many complexities. I wanted to switch gears from the consulting conversation and ask you about the foundation itself. I Need Diverse Games. For those who are new to your whole oeuvre, can you describe the programs that I Need Diverse Games actually puts on, and what does it take to sustain an organization like it?
Well, right now we're not doing a lot because of the pandemic.
Right. I was wondering especially with sending folks to conferences, if they're virtual, if that's still happening.
PAX West did happen, but I did not do a table there, just because I didn't know what safety measures would be there for interacting with people.
Yeah.
You did have to show you were vaccinated or had a negative test, but I just didn't feel comfortable. And by the time they changed to you must show you're vaccinated, it was really too late to set anything up. As things open, as we hopefully get to a point where we can travel freely again and people show they're vaccinated, Maybe for PAX Unplugged, we might do something, but mainly is trying to get people to go to GDC. We don't know yet if we're getting 2022 passes. But, we've been trying to support people starting podcasts with the McElroy family. We did a small grant run trying to get people to start streaming, helping them do that. And just here and there, just basically like, we have money right now, please take it, to help people do what they want to do.
Oop, sorry. I just lost my browser window for a moment.
Oh, no.
I'm back. No? Okay. I'm back.
That's okay.
So we have another question from the audience. Do you think we want to field this one, Tanya?
I think sure. I think I know.
I have more questions that I can ask.
Okay. Well, never mind.
Okay, I need diverse games. It's this infrastructure, if you will, support people with money, get to do the things that they need to do. If we want to think about very large scale, big picture, deep into the future, what other kinds of specific new infrastructure, or even if I can use the word institutions, would you like to see built in order to make the field of video games and tabletop games enduringly inclusive and diverse?
We just have to get more people in the industry and keep them there, because right now the biggest hurdle is access. I mean, and I'm sure a lot of people know, going to something like GDC, the Game Developer Conference, is super expensive. Even when you got your pass covered, you got to pay for a week in San Francisco. It's also making environments less hostile to people of color, queer folks, etc., and making sure we have a place to be in the industry and to exist. Also just changing the pipeline, because so many people veer away from the skills they need to go in the industry, like, the math pipeline, other things, and they are veered away from the hard sciences and programming early on, because how many women do we see in engineering and coding roles? How many people do we see that think if you can't program a C++, then you have no space in the industry? So it's broadening the idea of who gets to be a game developer, getting people in the door and getting them to stay there, and helping them do that, and getting more mentorship. So ideally, more people in the industry, more people getting to go to GDC, PAX Dev, other events, and also making sure people know there's a space for them in the industry, and not feeling like I made it just to leave the industry in 2 to 5 years because it's so hostile.
So, but to help that along, to make sure that those roles in the industry do change and stay changed, and those pipelines change, are there any particular structures that can be built in the world, like I Need Diverse Games? Is it venues or conferences, or maybe labor organization, or anything in particular that you think help fully make those changes to the pipeline?
More mentorship, more programs where it's not just a one and done thing. There's a lot of programs that exist where it's like, here's a laptop, here's a coding camp, now good luck, and they never talk to you again. Helping people learn how to pitch their game, helping people learn how to put together a portfolio if they're an artist or a writer, ways to connect with industry veterans that aren't parasitic in nature, and way more mentorship programs, because I don't know of many mentorship programs that are easy to find, easy to get into, or just access to industry people that isn't at a space that is already hard to get to. Like, there's always spaces like a GDC, but again, you have to be able to get to GDC to have that access. You have to be able to go to PAX Dev to have that access. So more organizations, more mentorship, and just frankly, more money.
We're just talking about the grand question, ultimately, where this money come from. We talk in government, subsidy, private philanthropy, crowdfunding, which is what we've gone through, or is this just something that you don't care to speculate on?
I mean, if we could get the government to actually grant money, because we know other governments do that. Look at Canada; they grant they grant people money to develop games. But considering we can't even get healthcare in this country, I don't think that'll happen. But I think studios as a way of giving back could do that, and I'm talking big studios. I'm not talking about like indie studios, because they're indie developers are already passing the same $20 around amongst each other. Right. I'm talking about the big studios where it's like you're making millions and millions of dollars. Put aside some money for the people that you want to come be the next generation of your developers.
Yeah, you have the resources to spare to create sort of renewal of the discipline and do it differently and correctly. Okay, so we've got some follow-ups to the earlier audience questions. Shall we dive into those?
Sure.
Okay, so audience member was curious if there were different ways of communicating issues of representation between a character you control versus someone you engage with as an NPC. So we're talking about character design, but there's how one might approach player characters versus non-player characters, and if issues of diversity and representation are treated differently for those different design projects.
No, because sorry, my computer had a problem this time. Do you still hear me?
I do.
Okay, good. Sorry, my computer just kind of had a moment. I don't approach it differently because whether you're interacting with that NPC or whether you are running around the world should still engage with you, your character, respectfully. Because let's say I'm the NPC and you're the PC. Now, and we interact in the game somehow. I would still have the same design notes for an NPC that is stereotypical as I would for a PC. And the only difference I think for me, and again, this is all based on how I do things. For a PC, if the PC is like, I have Geralt of Rivia, and the game is going to have a very set path of how the game interacts with me, versus I'm playing Dragon Age, and I can make this character look how I want, but the game does not interrogate my skin color choices, my race choices. Then I'm going to go, you let me make this character. Why doesn't the game world interact with me in that way? Why don't NPCs notice, oh, there's a person of color, or they're female, or, where did you come from? Because again, this is all going to tie back to the game's world. What I've realized, a lot of times the game is built and then the writing comes in. So until that changes, and writing and world building and game building is kind of hand in hand, we're only going to have the option of the game can only interact so much with you as an NPC or a PC. Now, in something like the Witcher, where you just have your character, you don't get to change at all. You don't get to do anything except maybe cosmetically. The game world does kind of interrogate you, because like I keep thinking of The Witcher because people react to Geralt walking down the street. They react to him when he goes in a bar. But I don't get that in games where I create my character and make them look a certain way. So we don't have the same interaction unless there's a narrative reason, and it's really, really odd that most games don't do that to me. But again, it's the writing comes later in the process.
Right.
But I mean, for me, I would still communicate the representation issues that I see the same way for NPC or PC.
So in either case, in other words, the details of character construction appearance are a wholly different thing than cultural context as it's expressed through the story. There's a big difference between these two things. So speaking more about characters, I have another question about characters. Do you have any thoughts regarding diverse casting of established characters versus creating new diverse characters?
Do you mean like changing existing characters? Because
like it was a very well-known character who's probably conventionally portrayed as white, and then recast versus a new character with its own new fresh identity.
I have many feels. I don't know how much I can cuss. But like the new Resident Evil show.
Go ahead. You could cuss.
You know, Wesker is cast as a black dude, and people are like, "Oh my god!" But Wesker's like this blonde dude. It's like it's a video game. This is are we going to ever do this? Because on the one hand, it's okay. You're recasting this character as a person of color, as a black person, as a woman. And, you know, something other than what the video game canon tells us. But it's also a video game. And if this derivative work, or if this reboot, remaster changes the ethnicity, is the game changing to acknowledge that? That's going to always be my question. Because, like, let's say we get a new Resident Evil game and we go back to Raccoon City and Wesker's suddenly a black dude. Is the game going to acknowledge this? Is it just going to be the same maniacal dude? Are you just, like, putting a black skin on Wesker and going about your day? Because the world would treat Wesker very differently if he was a black dude. And we all need, I feel like having new diverse characters is great. But again, does the world interrogate, the game world interrogate this? Does the game world acknowledge this? And what I always caution people against is diversity for the sake of diversity and checking off boxes.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because a lot of people go, well, I've got a brown character, I've got a female character, we've got a gay character. It's like, but are they walking, talking stereotypes? Are they actually well done? Did you talk to someone who's gay, who's a person of color, when you made these characters, when you gave them a voice, when you gave them dialogue? Or did you just have your color of Benetton ad or roster, and now you feel like you've done a good thing? Because look at me, I've got all these people of color. Look at me, aren't I great? That's where I have the issue. And also, who's writing the characters? Because you know, I'm going to pick on Dragon Age. My friend who asked this question is going to laugh at me. You know, I'm a huge Dragon Age nerd. I've got a Dragon Age tattoo, and you know, when we finally got the third game and we got a black woman, undeniably dark skin, she sided with the side of the oppressor. Her power came from cuckolding an old white dude. So it's like, we finally get a black woman, yes, she's like a walking stereotype. So that tells me there's no black people that you talked to when you wrote this character. Because why would you give us the Ice Queen, the stereotype of like basically a mammy in this character? When it's like, why we finally get a black character and now you've made her on the side of the oppressor. Thanks for that. You know, we also have Sarah in the same game where she's an elf, but she seems to not like being an elf. She actually argues with the elven inquisitor about, you're too elfy, and it's like, what does that mean?
So these are puzzling choices that seem to what's the phrase, to draw defeat from the jaws of victory. Like you nearly had it.
And it's like, I can see you interrogating the idea of self-hate and not knowing how to identify with your own culture, but that's not the way it was written came off very badly.
Yeah. So I'm going to attempt, because we're nearing the end of our time together, attempt to draw some threads here and allow you to reflect broadly on all these ways that you are working in the game industry and dealing with questions of diversity and inclusivity. So we've got the stream. It's been on for nearly a year. That's a lot to reflect on. I Need Diverse Games is still around, and you're consulting with other people's games as time goes on, and people are always concerned with characters in particular, and what the kind of relationships they have with them, and how that factors into contemporary ideas of race and inclusivity and other forms of identity. So anyway, putting that all together, what would you say is the current state of inclusivity in this field of games? And what would be like not the solution, but just like, what's just a next good step? Just like one thing to do.
It's slightly better than it was when I started doing this. Mm-hmm. You know, we have games like Deathloop. We have games like Battlefield 1, where you actually have a historically accurate, as much as I hate that word, but it's true in this case, historically accurate Black Squadron, the Harlem Hellfighters depicted in the game and on the cover. So it's marginally better, but it's like, you know, that image of an iceberg we always get when people talk about like kind of like levels of where we are, or it's like, here's this much of the iceberg, but then there's all of this under the surface. Everything under the surface needs to be chipped away. Honestly, I feel like we just need to raise games and start over, because it's so indoctrinated with the majority of people making our games as cis straight white dudes, and some of them think about this, some of them care about it, but there's too many that just go, it's just a game, it's entertainment, and they don't care about it. I would love it if we could have E3 and see more Black folks on stage at E3, you know, have someone beside Aisha Tyler. I like Aisha Tyler. I've never met her. I'm sure she's lovely, but she's like the same Black woman we've been getting on stage at E3 for like the last 10 years. See more Black folks at the Game Award, more women, and not just the same thing.
I'm so sorry. We've been interrupted by a 2-year-old's first appearance on VGA Fireside.
Well, hello, small human. Do you have a small human?
Yeah. Here. Say hi. We're almost done with the episode.
Hi.
There he is. Hello, audience. I'm sorry. That was an excellent answer to a very large and challenging question. And
that's okay.
And I think maybe Ask was just recognizing that and got excited about into the room.
Hello.
Okay.
It's like, but I want to say hi.
Oh, yeah, bye. See you on the next episode. So I appreciate you taking the time and taking a stab at that, sort of wrap it all up question. And it's exciting to hear that, you know, some things have become so conventionalized. To the way to actually create new affordances and new spaces for new ideas is to actually kind of just bulldoze some of it away.
Yeah.
Clear some space for others to do their work. Okay, so we're just about done with our hour. So really, there's just one last thing to do, and that is yes, plug whatever you'd like to plug, Tanya. It's the internet. Let's plug some stuff.
Let's see. Today's Monday, so Wednesday, Into the Motherland's Back, episode 8 of season 3 on my Twitch channel, Cypher of Tier. Thursday, Black Dice Society's back. So if you like D&D and horror, we're back on D&D's Twitch and YouTube channel. And then Sunday, Rivals of Waterdeep is back. It's the 11th season of our show, and we're having co-DMs for the first time. And then the rest of my time is being spent on many projects and writing Into the Motherlands. But I'm everywhere, Cypher of Tier, so.
Terrific. Make sure you check out Cypher of Tier in all of these places. I will also follow up and say, please support VGA Gallery. If you enjoy this program and others like it, you can purchase fine art prints made by video game artists from our website, vgagallery.org. And also sign up for the monthly VGA Zine. This is an online zine for enthusiasts of video game art and related new media, and it is free. So please check that out. Anything else that you'd like to mention, or words of wisdom or inspiration you'd like to share before I close us out, Tanya?
Oh boy, inspiration. You all have a point of inspiration if you play D&D.
Yeah.
But you know what? Be yourself. Be yourself. Don't cave to the you must be quiet, especially if you're a minority. Don't give in and be silent. Don't go along with groupthink if you're a part of it. And you belong in this space, especially if you're not cis, not white, not straight, not I'm messing up words because I'm tired. Basically, if you are anything but a cis straight white dude, you belong in the industry, and don't let anyone tell you you don't. Go make your game. You might think it's a silly idea, but make that game anyway, because no one else is going to make the game but you. Enjoy.
Terrific words of inspiration. I'm grateful for them. And I'm also grateful for those who help make this program possible. Segue. So I have the producer and director of operations, Bryce Pauls. I'd like to thank the designer and director of communications, Eleanor Schichtel. I'm going to thank the VGA staff of the VGA board and the Independent Game Designers Association in the Chicago chapter. Thank you, Ross. I want to say thanks for joining us, Dave Awambli's Intro to New Media and Expanded Cinema classes at UIC, and thank Electric Mirrors for the intro music, the Oldham Music Center Youth Brass Band for the fanfare that's about to take us home. And as always, if you know of an organization or group that would be interested in this program or have any feedback at all, please drop us a line at info@vgagallery.org, and we'd love to hear from you. And please join us next month towards the end of October when our special guests will be collaborators Kristen McWhorter and Alm Chung. This is going to be live on October 27th at a special time of 4 p.m. But before we go, let's everyone at home and everywhere, everyone in the world, thank Tanya DePass for joining us today. Thanks again. And finally, thank you to the audience members. Thank you for your questions and for taking a little bit of your evening away to join us. And so I will finally say, from all of us at VGA Gallery and for us at VGA Fireside, please stay warm.